So the media strategy to this point has basically been to deny the existence of any opponents to Joe Biden. It's been to do that and run cover for Joe Biden. And just if you show nothing but utter indifference, not even contempt, just indifference for Marianne Williamson, for RFK, then you just assume, well, it's only Joe Biden. He's the only one. That's all that there is. He's the only hope against the Republicans. He's all we're going to get. But this strategy is, of course, backfiring because Joe Biden's numbers continue to absolutely implode. Well, here we have a rare instance of a CNN host being honest about the reality of Joe Biden's situation. So this is Jake Tapper, and this is harder than I ever thought I'd see any CNN host go against Biden, man. This is really interesting. Let's watch.
And we're back with our 2024 lead. Horrible news. Horrible for Joe Biden in our new CNN poll. While the president leads his Democratic competitors by a huge margin, 2/3 of all of the American people surveyed, 66% of the public, say that a Biden victory would either be a setback or a disaster for the United States.
66%, a setback or a disaster for Joe Biden to be reelected. Jesus Christ, man. Look, I'm going to state the obvious here. Trump is the front runner by 1.5 miles on the Republican side. At this point, it'd be a damn near miracle if somebody on the Republican side overtakes Trump. I mean, you can get lucky and rely on investigations and prosecutions. Maybe. But if there isn't that, if he's not behind bars, if he doesn't die from a massive heart attack, what we're looking at is Donald Trump in the general election. And if the trends continue, Joe Biden in the general election. So Biden versus Trump again. And based on these numbers, it's not a layup anymore, bro. It is not a layup anymore. Now, look, I would rather take Joe Biden against Trump. If I had to have Joe Biden, which I don't want, right? But if I had to have him, Joe Biden versus Trump or Joe Biden versus any other standard Republican, I'm picking Joe Biden versus Trump because I think Trump is maybe the only one he has a chance of still beating. But it doesn't look good, man. And it's certainly not a layup. It's certainly not easy. It's certainly no guarantee. And I think Democratic elites have convinced themselves, oh no, this is a layup. This is easy. If it's Biden versus Trump, it's a wrap. Biden wins. I think that's how they're thinking. But they have to disregard every single poll that says stuff like this in order to believe that. 66%, a setback or a, quote, disaster for Joe Biden to be the nominee. Whoo, it doesn't get much worse than that. I would imagine there's similar numbers for Trump, if not better numbers for Trump on a question like this.
Let's get straight to CNN political director David Chalian at the Magic Wall. David, let's start with the state of the Democratic primary right now.
Yeah, you noted Joe Biden's lead in this Democratic primary. He's at 60% among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents in this poll, Jake. Robert Kennedy Jr. is getting 20% support inside this primary right now against an incumbent president, Marianne Williamson. You may remember from last time around, she's running again this cycle at 8% naming someone else.
Okay, by the way, let me pause here to say I'm shocked that they're even bringing up RFK and Marianne Williamson. I'm shocked. And credit to them, because normally they pretend like they don't exist. Now, with RFK getting 20% in this new CNN poll, that puts him in league with Ron DeSantis in terms of his numbers. That's about where Ron DeSantis is in polls. Now, is RFK getting coverage that's equal to that of Ron DeSantis in terms of how much time they talk about him? No. Are they trending in that direction? No. There's another poll that just came out, too, that had RFK at 11, Marianne Williamson at 11. Same poll. Double digits for both of them. And again, the media takes Nikki Haley or Tim Scott more seriously when they're polling it donut in some polls. They're lucky if they crack 3%. So that just goes to show you the landscape and how off it is. But look, this is a big acknowledgement. And again, this is a CNN poll, which is why they're talking about it. They're like, oh, wow, 20%. Woo.
See inside the numbers where Biden's strength is and where a potential warning sign is. If you look just at those who identify as Democrats, that's a Biden strength. He's winning 67% of them. It's among those that are independents and they lean Democratic, so they're in this sample. But there it's a much closer race, 40% of them for Biden, 32% for Kennedy. So Kennedy's support comes from not tried and true Democrats, but more leaners, Jake. And then
now, look, I will say my theory on RFK support to this point is name recognition. The Kennedys are a dynasty name. So hearing that name, you guys, oh, okay, him. I'm sure some of the people who are saying to pollsters, yeah, I support this guy, they can't pick him out of a lineup. But the fact of the matter is, 40% to 32% with Democratic-leaning independents, wow, is that real? I don't care how or why they're saying they support him. That's real. Now, same thing, Marianne Williamson, 8% Democratic support, 9% independent support. Her best numbers come among young people. It also comes in the first states, in New Hampshire, in Iowa. That's where she's doing the best. Other poll, 11% for both of them. There's a real race here if the media decides to take it seriously and talk about it. This is the first time, maybe ever, I'm seeing them talk about it in a serious way. So look, I don't do this often. I don't say stuff like this often, but you got to give credit where it's due. Credit to Jake Tapper. Credit to this dude for actually talking about these things. Because honestly, at this point, my expectation would be this poll be released and then they bury it. And nobody talks about it ever. Because it's embarrassing. And it is, quote, horrible for Joe Biden. But they're admitting it. They're admitting it to their credit.
Take a look here. We asked, might your mind change? A slim majority, 55%, say they might change their mind. 45% say they're definitely going to support who they're with. I'll just note, Biden supporters are locked in. About 6 in 10 of them say they are committed to him and not going to change their mind. So it's the folks that are with Williamson or Kennedy who are probably more malleable in this race.
And David, when it comes to how voters see Joe Biden and another presidential term, I mean, those are some bad numbers.
Well, I mean, just your basic
Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at his face. He seemed surprised. He seemed shocked, which, should you be? I don't know, man. It's hard for Joe Biden to complete a sentence. They have to get his ass back in the Oval Office before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because when it gets late, he starts losing it mentally.
Favorable opinion or unfavorable opinion of Joe Biden? Look at how Americans are rating him, Jake. I mean, 35% favorable. That is remarkably low. 57% have an unfavorable rating. And look at this by party. We looked from December to now. So a little tick down among Democrats, 82 to 79% favorable. That's his hometown team. But look at this decline among independents from December. 35% favorable rating in December. He's now down at 26% favorable with independents, critical voters in the electorate. Jake, that's a big warning sign.
Now, let me say this. Some might look at these numbers and say, with him doing so poorly, you got other establishment corporate Democrats chomping at the bit to get into the race. The Gavin Newsom types, for example. Even, others who are maybe half in that establishment camp, half out of it, people like J.B. Pritzker. We got a bunch of these people who might be looking at this like, I don't know, man. I see a window. I see an opening. Maybe I could do this. Here's my guess. They ain't going to jump in the race, bro. They ain't going to jump in the race. Why? Because they're going to wait in line. They're going to wait their turn. They don't want to piss off that party structure because they want that party structure to have their back when the time comes. But I'm sure you have even people like Mayor Pete, right? He's waiting on the sidelines. There's a bunch of puff pieces that were being written about him. Remember that Wired magazine one, which was just disgusting? They're sitting back. They're watching. But I don't think any of them are going to pull the trigger, which is why the only two challengers you see at this point are outsiders.
How do Biden's numbers here compare to those of the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump?
Right. Well, you hear Joe Biden say all the time, compare him to the alternative, not the almighty. And basically, they're both not looking good, Jake, right? They have basically the same numbers. Biden's favorable number is a tick down numerically from Donald Trump's 37%, but this is all margin of error. They're both at 57% unfavorable. They look pretty similar there. Neither is a good look, I should note. And then you noted that question we asked, what would it mean if Trump or Biden won the 2024 election for the country? 41% say a Biden win would be a disaster. Trump, 44% say that about him. Okay, but if you look down here, would it be a triumph? Only 7% say that a Biden victory would be a triumph for America. 17% say that about Trump. His hardcore supporters are more into him, perhaps, than Biden's hardcore supporters are into him.
You don't say. You don't say. I've never noticed anything like that before. As Biden is a guy who pretended like, I'm going to be the next FDR. Dude, FDR wouldn't give you the time of day. He wouldn't give you the time of day. We're talking about a guy who had 80% of the House, 80% of the Senate, and won the presidential race 4 times. He had ride or die people. Why? Because he really, really delivered for the American people. The New Deal was phenomenal. He said, I welcome their hatred to the Wall Street oligarchs. He was a fighter for the people. His economic policies were unmatched. Joe Biden is splitting the difference. He's splitting the difference between, neoliberalism and social democracy. He's better than Obama. He's better than Clinton. But ultimately, this is still not what this country needs at this moment. This country needs, as Marianne Williamson says, an economic U-turn, and he ain't delivering it. But Donald Trump, just based off of his cult of personality, man, cult of personality, 17% say a triumph if he wins. That's Trump's ride or die people. And he's probably got 30% that would never abandon him under any situation ever. Biden doesn't have that. He doesn't have that cult-like following. He's even losing his soft following, which is how I would have described Biden's support. Soft. So this is interesting, man. These numbers are interesting.
Worse for Biden, but for both of them, most of the American people think electing them would be a disaster or a setback for both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the current Democratic and Republican frontrunners.
It is not an election the American people want.
What a country.
Yeah, what a country indeed. Hillary versus Trump. People didn't want that. Biden versus Trump. People didn't want that. Looking at Biden versus Trump again. Of course people don't want that. We got some big issues here, man. Some big, big issues. And this is one of the first times, if not the first time, I've seen CNN really take a look at this stuff and go, whoa. Because, again, the conventional wisdom is, well, of course Biden will beat Trump. Of course. Now it's becoming, I don't even know, man. Trump's got 9 lives politically. You know, he has his moments where he plummets in popularity, like right after January 6th and right after the midterms, where he bottoms out at like 25% favorability, 28% favorability, whatever it is. But he keeps bouncing back. He's a bull in a china shop. Whereas Biden barely exists. And their numbers look really, really similar. But either way, it's a massive loss for the country. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.